Just thought I'd show you guys how I fitted my Sirocco II fan into my van. It's not a review, just a quick install. This is a tin cup traveller. I'm fitting a Sirocco II fan in my van today, and I just thought I might run through the quick procedure on this, only because it's a little bit more difficult than perhaps your average install, simply because in this van I don't have a lot of options as to where I want to put it, and the best option I've found is up on this wall here, and that's because it gives me an amount of flexibility to direct the fan to the bed, to the couch, and virtually get the maximised use out of the directional flow of the air that can come from the fan. Now, the problem I have is that typically in caravans, they make them very light, and this is no exception. Now, this wall here has a timber frame, but this is just a veneer. Now, I can get this bracket that comes with the fan. I can mount it to the frame here and here internally, but if I drill through this veneer, I'm basically drilling into fresh air, and therefore I've got no substance to hold the fan securely. So I had to work a few things out. So in this case, my radio goes in there. That's also another convenience because there's power there that I can tap into for the fan, but I also have to put in a backing plate inside. I'll see if I can show you that, because inside there that veneer is just going to give way, so I've had to make up a piece of timber that I can put inside there, mount it up on the inside and screw into this. That'll give me some substrate to work with that'll make that secure when I mount the screws, so hopefully that'll solve my problem. So you can see on here I've basically marked out where the subframe is that I can actually screw to. So I know where some screws can go into. Now of course this is the bracket that comes with the Sirocco fan for mounting it to the wall. So you mount this to the wall, and then this gets, or the fan gets mounted to this through these two holes. Now, it's probably this and this hole that are going to cause me the biggest grief, because they're going to be floating in midair. So what I have to do is I firstly have to use screws long enough to get into this subframe here, but I also have to have screws long enough to go through this veneer, which is probably about as thick as the frame itself, which is probably got an air gap behind here about 20 mil. So essentially I need some longer screws to go through where that'll pass through the veneer. That way I can then screw in that bit of timber that I've got on the inside and get a good fixing. So I shall proceed to drill the holes where this needs to go, using this as a template, and I'll show you my progress. Alright, so basically I've put my bit of timber behind, I've got my screws. You'll see this one screws into this rail. These two actually screw into that vertical rail. This one here goes through midair, this one goes through midair, and this one goes through midair into the plate that's back in here, into the timber piece that I've inserted in that cavity to give me some backing to screw to. Alright, so I've had to drill a hole through there as well, because this lead has got to be attached to the fan at some point. I've also wrapped that in a bit of pigtail, because up in there it comes pretty close to the edge of this metal, so I'm just giving it a bit of extra protection against that edge should it happen to rub. That way if there's any kind of electrical short or wear on the wire, it's not going to create a problem that we might have blowing fuses. So alright, so it's a pretty easy deal just from here. It really means all I've got to do is screw these terminals onto the appropriate connections at the bottom of the fan, which is essentially these two in the middle there, marked positive and negative appropriately. You just got to work out which one is the negative on this, and it's the one that's actually got a little trace on it. It's very hard to see. We can't see it in this light, but there's a bit of a trace on that negative wire there. You'll see that dashed line. That's the negative wire. Goes to the negative terminal. So I'll push a bit of that pigtail back through here. Get that bolted onto the bottom of the fan. Then the fan essentially just locates on these lugs, which are the 6 lugs there. Go into those holes on the bottom, those keyholes. And then essentially, I just do a bit of jiggle. One-handed it's a bit difficult. Puts on there, push it down, and then in here, there's a couple of screw holes, or one screw hole on either side. And on the back of this backing plate, there's actually a little hexagon headed insert where you fix a nut to the backing. It just sits in there on the back side. So it allows you to screw through onto that nut, which is effectively then just securing the fan in place. The bulk of the weight of the fan's taken on all these lugs, so those screws don't need to be too substantial, only 2 of them holding it on. So that's pretty much all that needs to happen. Next is just slot it on, fix the wires, screw in those 2, then I'll wire it up to the power and we'll see how we go. So there's my wires. There is a trace on that one on the positive, on the negative. So we're ready to go. There's a bit of pigtail that'll go through that hole there, and that little hole there. Sorry, there's a bit of shadow in there. It's going through the wall. Power lead's coming out there. Those wires there will get wired in. So now all I've got to do is pop that on there, drop it down, screw in the lugs. Okay, so there's my fan in place. So in this corner it actually gives me quite a bit of versatility as to where I can direct the flow. So I can swing it right around there. I can tilt that down, so when I'm sitting here, no problem. Face it anywhere around the room, back here. Certainly bring it out, rotate it, all sorts of stuff. And then I can direct it to the bed as I please. So I can float it around like that, bring it down any direction I want. It's really quite a versatile little fan when it comes to directional. Alright, so the next thing I have to do is wire that up and we'll power it on. See how we go. Okay, so there we have it. All the wires are in place where they should be. Positive onto here, negative tucked into here, positive in here off the radio. And let's just fire it up, see what happens. So we've got a fan button and we've got a timer button. And incidentally, on the other side of this, there's also another repeat of that, so you can operate it from either side, because it just depends on which way you mount it and how you get access to it. But at this point, I will hit the go button, see what happens. Look at that, we have a fan. And that's blowing out quite a bit of, I don't think you can see that, but a piece of something lighter I could show you. But that's low at the moment, blowing out quite a bit of nice cool air. And we'll pump it up to speed 2. Okay, gee, that's cranking up, and it's only on speed 2. So it's putting out a lot of air, and it's relatively quiet too, which is good. So let's try it on 3. And 3 is humming away nicely, and believe me, that's blowing out some air. So I think it's going to keep me cool in bed right there. So at this point it's running high. Now there's a timer here, so if you can see this, there's a series of 4 little LEDs, and they're basically just stepping it out in time. So it's 3, 6, 9 and 12 hours it'll operate. So after that amount of time that you set it, it'll drop off. And there goes the first light, so that'll be 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, 12 hours. Press it again, it's off. And this just now being on the high speed, step it to the next position, which would be 0, it'll be off. So press for low once, press for medium again, press for high again, press again, it's off. All good. Okay, and that's a pretty solid mount, so I'm confident that is not going to go anywhere while the vans move along. There you go. Now just tidy up this spaghetti and put it all back into that little cavity where it belongs. Put the radio back, and job's done. Then what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of a measure on the current draw on this on the various speeds. I'll show you that shortly. There is everything all back as it should be. Right, so now coming up will be the amp test, just to see how much it's going to draw. So I have a particular device on my battery that allows me to remote monitor the current draw being used when I'm on DC. This is a DC fan, so it's going to require DC draw when I'm off the grid. So I know how much I'm using. So I'll run the test. Okay, so the user manual says that on low it's going to draw just a little bit over 0.1 amps, on medium a little bit over 0.2, and on high a little bit over 0.3. So that's quite low current draw. Okay, so this is my phone's app for the battery check from BM Pro. Essentially that's mounted to the negative terminal on the batteries, which every connection goes back to it. Then I'm able to monitor the condition of the battery and see what state of charge it's at, and also see the current draw. So when I hit the first position on the fan, you'll see that the little meter on the left will show 0.1, which is somewhere between 0.1 and 0.2 amps as stated in the user manual. So you'll see that go up in just a sec, and there it goes. Now, of course I'm running at speed low. Then I will push the button to go to the medium setting. It'll go to 0.2, only because I'm at only at 1 decimal point, somewhere between 0.2 and 0.3, and then when I hit the high, it goes to 0.3, just like that. So that's very useful at measuring the amp draw of this. Well, I've got nothing else, absolutely nothing else running in the van. And I switch it off, and you'll see that drop back to 0. Simply means I can run that fan for quite a long time on my battery. So here's a bit of a live demo on the fan force of this Sirocco fan. I've tied a little bit of paper towel, very scientific, press the button, boom, there we go. That's the level of flow. It would help give some indication on low. Put it to 2, she certainly cranks up. That's going to be ample. I wouldn't have it any higher than that, I think, if I was laying in bed of a night time. Middle speed. But certainly if it gets too hot and I want to cool down other parts of the van, I can wake it up to 3. And there it goes. It's blowing a gale. That is a super duper little fan. Love it. Now, just something I should have pointed out a little bit earlier. To get my measurements here, obviously I've got a bit of extended length on this end plate of the cupboards that I had to measure back from to figure out where my little subframe was. So from there I measured back to here, and then I allowed another 20 mil because that's the width of the subframe, so that when I screwed into here I made sure that the screws actually went into the subframe. Same on the bottom, because there's a little bit of overhang. Measure up that distance to there, allow about 20 mil up, and that's where the bottom line is screwed into. So it's a relatively easy fit. You just got to take a bit of time, have a bit of a think about it before you start doing things. Measure twice, cut once, and anyone can do it. Just got to have a reliable power source conveniently. I know you can run wires if you want to. It's a bit of a job sometimes in a finished van. Luckily I had this little cavity where the radio was. Perhaps if I wanted to I could have tapped off that light somehow by running a wire down the wall, but that was all too hard. So that was very convenient in my case in this van. So there we go. One little bit more of a creature comfort when I go off-grid camping. Gotta love this fan. Anyway, Tin Cup Traveller, that's it for this one.